G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Ral West from Ral West Living the Dream, based in Sitka, Alaska, in the United States. Thanks for your time today, Ral.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here.
I think you're the first person we've had from Alaska on. We've had quite a few different countries, but no one from the great state of Alaska, which I haven't made it to yet, but I hear it's beautiful.
It is gorgeous. You must come.
Let's start with how we know each other. You were on our Quickfire Friday podcast, episode 610, late December last year, 2024, with Rob. And I listened to that episode and I was really captivated with your business journey. And I thought I must have Ral on to ask the main format of our Monday and Wednesday cast, because I really wanted to hear more about your business journey. I think you're going to have a lot of great insights for our audience.
Well, wonderful. Happy to share.
We'll tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Okay. Well, the business that I have right now, Ral West Livin the Dream, is a small startup. And the purpose of it is to teach entrepreneurs everything I've learned over the past 40 plus years as an entrepreneur, and mostly to teach them how to become the owner of their business as opposed to the operator, working on their business instead of in it. And I have 6 basic principles that I teach that are the foundation of all sustainable, successful businesses. And I love teaching entrepreneurs how to have the life that they want and still have a successful business. And that's what I learned how to do the hard way. And I'm thinking, hey, I can make this a lot easier for people by shortening their learning curve. You don't have to go through what I went through.
That's good. And I'm doing the same, but I'm only 25 years in. And that's where all my grey hairs come from and lack of hair. But we have a little internal strapline here, which is we help small businesses grow with ease so the owners can live the lifestyle they signed up for. Because as you well know, people jump into small business thinking, shit, this is going to be easy. And it's not. It's the opposite. It's a lot harder. So that's great that you're out there helping.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I have had many years that were very, very tough. And I don't wish that upon anyone.
Yep. Maybe you want to run through the 6 principles quickly?
Okay, very quickly, the first one is systems. You must have systems. And whether they're simple manual systems or whether you're using complex automation, you need to do things that will make your workflow more efficient and smoother. And also make sure that you're tracking your data. That's principle number 2. Measure and track your performance and create the reports that you need so that you can do database management. Number 3 is use leverage. Leverage however you can. There's so many different forms of leverage. One of them being education, getting mentors and taking classes and buying online courses like mine, and just using your team, learning how to delegate properly. Those are all excellent forms of leverage. Next is to build your team. You make sure that you have a team that understands your values, your principles, and is aligned with your goals, and make sure that they have the tools and the knowing of what a good job looks like so that they can perform the way you want them to. And that way that gives you more freedom to grow your business. And then it's the culture. You must work on your culture very purposefully and intentionally. And again, the foundation is your own values and principles, and make sure that you communicate that throughout your team, throughout your customer base, to your community, and make sure that you are, living up to your own values and principles. And last but certainly not least is your customers. Customer service. I believe in delighting your customers to make sure that they come back again and again. We certainly needed that in our primary business that we operated for 25 years. We couldn't have been successful without our repeat customers. So yeah, those are the 6 principles in a nutshell.
That's great, and they're very closely aligned to our what we talk about five growth pillars, which are people, strategy, marketing, funding, and systems. And on the point you had a minute ago about tracking data and monitoring key numbers, yeah,
Mhm.
I love that Peter Drucker quote: "What gets measured gets managed." It's so important to have
Yes.
those scorecards and KPIs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you must start with your finances, of course, and having a good system for keeping track of your, your profit and loss statements and get those reports monthly and make sure that you look at them.
That's right, and a forecast for looking forward as well.
Yeah. And one of the mistakes that I made early on was that I just kept my eye on the top line, the gross revenue, and I neglected to really pay attention to what was left over after my expenses. And that was a good learning experience. So now I probably go straight to the bottom line when I look at a P&L.
And how did you start out?
I started in my own small business. It was a marketing consulting firm and it became an advertising agency specializing in tourism in Alaska. And it was just me. Shortly after I started the business, I met my husband. He was in real estate and he liked the fact that I was flying off to Hawaii because some of my clients were in Hawaii and I had to go there to understand the products. And he said, I like going to Hawaii. I would like to do that as a business trip. So he figured out a way to start packaging the real estate, the condos that Alaskans owned in Hawaii, and putting them together. And I taught him the travel industry aspect of that. And that became the beginning of a business that we ran together for 25 years. We grew it to 8 digits in annual revenue
Wow.
and sold it to Alaska Airlines, which is now has purchased Hawaiian Airlines and will be operating those flights to Australia.
Oh, fantastic. And
Yes.
so what was it? What was it that Alaska Airlines? What kind of services were they buying in the business? Like, what was the
What
prime?
did they buy? Okay.
Yeah.
Our business was named Hawaiian Vacations. And we started off, as I said, just packaging condos and rental cars and, you know, uh, inter-island air in Hawaii, but then we started adding the trans-Pacific air from Anchorage to Honolulu, and we would buy seats from the scheduled carrier that served the market. Then the scheduled carrier pulled out of the market, and we had no way to get our passengers to Hawaii. So necessity was the birth of the real huge growth of our business because we had to find a way to keep this company going. We could have quit, and we talked about quitting, but we decided, no, this is a service that the Alaskans really want and need. So we have to find a way. And my husband found an airplane that had some hours on it in a schedule that it was operating where it was available and it had the time to make a round trip between Anchorage and Honolulu. And we chartered that plane and it was a huge risk. We had a big leap of faith, put my husband's mother's school teacher retirement account up as collateral for the guarantee for this charter. And we made it. And of course, everybody told us we shouldn't be doing this, couldn't be doing this. And I looked at the numbers. We talked about the numbers. I looked at my spreadsheets that showed exactly how many seats we had been selling in the summertime from Alaska to Hawaii. And I said, we can do it. These numbers prove that we can provide the occupancy for this plane. And we did. And then we went on and kept chartering more and more planes, bigger and bigger jets, wide body jets, 767, 710, 11,
Oh,
L1011s, excuse me. And the company just grew and grew and grew. We ended up with like a little over 50 employees. And then we were able to cut our employee count down considerably because we spent almost 2 years and well over 6 digits in investment in software that would allow us to have reservations taken online. And that was speaking of leverage, that was a huge leverage tool for us. And the minute we flipped the switch on that automation, we were able to save lots of money in labor and the bookings just poured in. It was just amazing.
it's fantastic. Out of interest, how long was the direct flight from Anchorage to Honolulu?
5.5 hours.
Well, that's not too bad, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we advertised 0 to 80 in 5.5 hours.
Yeah. And at your peak, how many passengers would you have been taking a year?
35,000.
Whoa, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
and so when the business was bought, there wasn't were there other airlines doing direct flights, or that's the reason why Alaska bought you?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They were coming into the market. We knew that. And so we decided this would be a good time to convince them that it would be cheaper for them to buy the market than to win it, because it would be a fair war. And we wouldn't go down, easily. We would go out fighting and we would all lose money. So they did the wise thing and bought our business. And it was a good thing for all of us. But our customer base, I mentioned to you how delighted our customers were with us. They were mad at us. They were like, how could you do this to us? How could you leave us? So we had to overcome that.
And what year was that?
2008,
Yep.
early 2008.
Good timing with the GFC.
Yes, we were very fortunate. Yes, very fortunate.
And out of interest, did they approach you, or you guys were thinking of selling the business and putting it on the market?
Yeah, no, we had been watching the market, which is another thing that I teach is very important, is to keep your eye on the horizon and know what's going on around you. So we were well aware of the fact that their intention was to come into our market. So we approached them before they ever made any announcement about that, and we hired an investment banking firm to help us, basically package our business and help us make the pitch to Alaska Airlines. And it didn't happen overnight. It
Mm.
took a while to have the meetings. It's a big corporation. They hadn't made a purchase since they'd purchased Horizon Airlines 25 years before.
All right.
So this was a kind of a big deal for them. And they were kind of scratching their heads going, how do we do this? What do we do? So it turned out well. It was a long slog to get it done, but it was a good thing. And then we went on. We didn't stop there. We
Mm.
could have retired. We had the money in the bank and we could have retired, but we said, no, no, we still have energy and, we're young enough. And so we started investing in cruise ships and bought some small cruise ships that were basically bank owned. The cruise operator had gone bankrupt, and the ships were just sitting in Seattle at a dock. And so we struck a deal with the bank saying, yeah, we'll take them off your hands. And we got them for, pennies on the dollar, and then had to pour millions into fixing them up and getting them passenger ready again, and found a cruise operator who would run them for us. So all we had to do was, spend the money getting them ready to go to market. And then they did all the marketing and all the operating, and we just collected the lease payments every month.
Wow, very clever. So that was after obviously you sold to Alaska Airlines. How long did
Yes,
how long did you have that cruise business for?
about 10 years.
Yeah.
And we sold the last cruise. We had one left when COVID struck. And that ship was tied up at a dock for 2 years because no cruise ships were operating. I'm sure you remember that.
Mm.
And, Australia wouldn't let any cruise ships in, and neither would most other countries. So that, lowered the value of that ship. So we didn't do as well selling that one as we had on the others. But nevertheless, there was certainly a sign in the marketplace that it was time to pivot again and get out of the cruise ships. So our next major pivot was into multifamily real estate. So we had been investing in real estate in Alaska and Hawaii since the 1990s. And this time we studied with a mentor and joined a mastermind and learned how to do multifamily syndications, where there would be a group of general partners that would find the properties and strike the deal with the seller, and then hire a property management company to run these were large apartment complexes, at least 60 or 100 units, and some of them, several hundred units apartment complexes. And then we would partner with other people, either as limited partners or general partners. And we started that in 2021. And within a couple of years, we had purchased uh, partnerships in about 6,000 apartment units in 5 states across the US. So yeah. So now that's one of our businesses.
That's fantastic. Geez, you're worse than me. I've had 15 businesses. Keep going. What's the next one?
Well, we have one of our businesses just runs the real estate that we own in Alaska. We have some tenplexes and a triple net lease, and then we have vacation rentals in Hawaii, which is another business. So we're down to only like four businesses or so. Mm.
That's great. I think I'm down
Yeah.
to seven.
Oh, you're young. I am.
You've exited at least two, haven't you? Is it only two you've exited?
Oh, well, yeah, there've been some others. I mean, like there was the motel and RV park that we owned for gosh, 17, 18 years.
Hmm.
We exited that. That was actually one of my dumber moves was buying that. So I don't want to talk about that. But
Yeah, fair enough. I assume you've heard of John Warrillow, built to sell. He's written three books, Built to Sell, The Automatic Customer, and The Art of Selling Your Business. And he has an awesome weekly podcast. It's almost 10 years old now. Have you heard of his material?
I actually have not. No, I'd love
Oh,
to.
I'll send them through to you, and if
Okay.
you're okay with it, if you'd like, we've had John on our podcast a couple of times. I think you'd be a great guest for John. We don't
Oh,
dive into
lovely.
yeah, we don't dive into the numbers around exit and all the mistakes made, etc. But he does. I think you'd be a great guest for him.
Yeah. Well, mistakes are the way we learn.
Yep,
So I'm not really ashamed of the mistakes. Have a couple of regrets, but there's so much learning involved, and I'd obviously rather learn in a less expensive way. Um, but sometimes you just gotta make the mistakes and get your lessons.
that's right. Yep. And we've had John on our Quick Fire Friday as well as I had him on the main cast as well. Great guy. He's based in Toronto, Canada. Very experienced. Sold a few of his own businesses, but produces some really good content. Not just three books, but I listened to 3 or 4 episodes of his weekly cast. I'm almost back to episode 1 now, but it's just great. So many lessons in those casts about exiting.
Excellent. Yes, I'd love to meet him.
So if I've had enough coffee today, you started the first business in 1983, and then 25 years later, and sold it.
81, well, my little business with 81, the Hawaiian Vacations was like the end of 82 and sold at the beginning of 2008. So
And
yeah.
roughly how old were you when you started the first business in
Oh,
1981?
now you're really getting, into some territory there. I'll just say I was in my mid 20s.
Yep, very diplomatic. Uh, and do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business, maybe the charter business?
The numbers about the growth, well, as I said before, we were doing 8 digits of annual revenue. And when we had to write checks to the IRS for 7 digits, I think that was a sign of success.
Yeah.
Although I really did not want to write that check, but I remember my father saying, you should be happy that you made that much money, that you owe that in taxes. So that's one way to look at it, I guess.
Yeah. And you mentioned before you started with on your own and you got the charter business up to a peak of 50 team members. So that's,
Yes,
yeah.
just right around that, 50, 52, something like that. Yeah. But then we dropped it, dropped the head count after that, after the automation.
Yeah. So, and obviously that's why one of your 6 principles is systems.
Yes. Yes. And, we used systems to get ourselves out of the day-to-day operation of the business. We were the mom and pop for many, many years and had our hands in all the different departments. And, my husband would sign every single check. And it was just, crazy. We couldn't be away from the business. And we were always tired and, working nights and weekends and all of that. And neither of us was very healthy or in good shape, overweight and no exercise. And so that was not a good way to live. So we learned how to create the systems and how to use our team better and, work on the culture. And one of our best mentors for all of that was Robert Kiyosaki, who is the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
And
But when
Cash Flow Quadrant, I thought was an excellent book as well, after his Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is, a seminal book.
Yes,
Now, he also
yes,
he owns a shit ton of properties as well, doesn't he? Tens of
he
thousands.
does.
Yeah.
He does. He's very, very big in real estate. And we started studying with him in the late 1880s, 1980s, not that old.
Yeah.
Um, and this was way before he wrote his book. And so I remember we had lunch with him on the Big Island in Hawaii, and he said, "You've got to go get this book and read it, and it'll be great for you." And it was called The E-Myth by
Mm.
Michael Gerber. And we picked it up that same afternoon and devoured it and went back to Anchorage and said, "Okay, this is what we need to do. We need to start creating these systems and developing ways to duplicate ourselves, teach other people how to do what we do." And I remember one time I even, it came down to like, how do you make decisions so that someone else could make this important decision if you weren't there? And one of them was my marketing team said, "How did you know that we needed to spend more money on advertising right now?" And it was a head scratcher for me. I'm like, well, I just know. It's my instinct. And I had to pick that apart. And I've gradually realized that no, I was watching the data.
Mm.
I was watching the sales. And so I developed a criteria. I said, okay, if sales are declining 3 days in a row, that means it's enough to be a trend. And that means we need to hit more advertising and increase the budget at that point. And it worked. And so from then on, the marketing team could make that decision without me being involved. And that's how you get to be free. And we could have our second home in Maui and travel and have our yacht and, enjoy life.
Very smart, Ral. And the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, I think it was late 80s, early 90s that came out. It's the number one book I recommend to anyone thinking of starting, let alone growing a small business. And I have a few experience, but I certainly did. It was early 2000s. I couldn't believe I hadn't heard of the book. I'd started my first business in 1999, but a business mate of mine, business partner actually, he was doing his MBA, and I said, "I'll give you my best book, and if you give me yours," and he gave me the E-Myth, and mine was good, but nowhere near as good as the E-Myth. And reading it, it's just all these aha moments and a lot of common sense in there. But you turn around and look at your own business, and it's not common practice.
Yeah, unfortunately not. And I recommended that book to many of our friends who were in business, and they would read it, and then I'd ask them later, well, did you do it? Did you implement the systems? Oh, well, no.
Hmm.
It was a great book. So there's there's a difference between just absorbing the knowledge and then actually executing what you've learned.
My favorite Thomas Edison quote: "Vision without execution is hallucination."
Yeah, yeah. And I think Tony Robbins says something very similar to that. And I study with him now too. So yeah. But I'm a learning junkie. I think that's one of the things that to be successful, you must be committed to learning. And as I mentioned earlier, that education is one of the greatest forms of leverage. And if you don't leverage the knowledge of other people, you're only going to get so far, because you can't know everything and you can't do everything. So we have to use other assets to get ahead.
Totally agree. And I actually recorded a solo Quickfire Friday episode a couple of weeks ago. It went live now for 8 minutes, basically me talking about the number one habit I think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain, which is what we call PD or professional development. I do over 14 hours a week on two speed of audio books and podcasts. That's 28 hours a week at normal speed. That's 144 books a year. If I just listen to books, that I'd get through a year, but just you've got to do it, plus mentors and online courses and coaches and things like that. But
Yeah, well, that's tremendous.
yeah, well, it's all in
Yeah,
dead time, driving around, or shooting hoops in the sun, bushwalking with my chocolate Labrador Carlton supporter. Um,
wonderful.
yeah, it's great. I really enjoy it.
That's leverage,
Yeah, there you go. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
When we were able to hire a chief operating officer and a chief financial officer and hand the reins of the business over to them. And then right about that same time, we bought our second home in Maui, and we could just go and spend time on Maui. We had made it. I mean, it had taken us years to get to that point where we could walk away. And later, I remember watching them grow the business way beyond where we had handed it to them. And it was kind of like, oh, I thought we were doing okay. And then you guys took it way further. And they paid me a very nice compliment of saying, yes, but you created the foundation. And so I will take that compliment because we worked very hard on that foundation. And that included, the team and the culture and all of the systems, all of the measurements, the tracking. And we were able to keep track of what was going on in the business wherever we were, because we had internet by that time, and we could just look at the reports and see how it was going. And then we had our regular meetings. And another form of leverage that we used was we had an outside board of directors, and they were advisors to us. We picked three gentlemen from the different industries in Alaska, but who were at the top of their field, and we asked them to come onto our board of advisors, and they said yes, and we gave them trips to Hawaii, so they liked that, and we would meet like 2 or 3 times a year with them and go over all of the financials and all of the planning and the strategies and everything, and we got so much wisdom from them. And particularly since they were from different fields, one was a banker, one was the CEO of a large grocery chain, the other was very, very big in the tourism industry. And they just gave us, all of their knowledge. And it was very valuable.
That's very, very wise, Ral. What does success look like to you?
Success looks like being able to live the dream, that I can travel when I want to in the style in which I like to travel, which is pretty much luxury, and that my time is my own. I can decide when or if I want to work. I don't have to work, and I can take care of myself. I spend time at the gym, and if I'm on Maui, I'm taking long walks. When I'm in Sitka, I'm working out with my personal trainer, and I'm in better shape physically, mentally, emotionally than I've ever been in my life. And who cares about the years? I feel younger and more vital than ever. That is success.
Perfect question for you, not just because you started a small marketing agency in 1981, but also it sounds like you had a big focus on marketing in all your businesses or the value of it.
Mhm.
What's the number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Oh gosh. The technology of marketing changes so much over the years. I don't think the concepts have changed that much, but how you go about it is far different from the way it was, 20, 30 years ago. Remember, when we sold our business, newspapers were still a thing. And you don't use those anymore. So I think you have to research, and I'd say to reach out to the experts in the field to find out how to best get the word out about your business. And every business is unique in terms of how it's going to reach its customers. You have to know who your customers are, and how to reach them and get your message across to them in the most efficient way possible. And you have to keep it up. Nowadays, more than ever, the marketplace is so noisy. You have to be out there continually with your message for anybody to notice you. It used to be way back when, you'd say that you have to see a newspaper ad, 5 or 7 times in order for it to stick. Now I think it's probably several hundred times that you need to be seen on social media to have anybody really notice you. So it's very different in that regard. But you do, have to figure out which of the many, many, many vehicles are going to be the best for you, and automate it. You know,
Mm.
I have uh, I have a VA. We use all kinds of automation tools for social media posts and for even creating the content. Use that kind of leverage. AI is here to stay, and if you're not using it already, you better jump on board.
Absolutely. Have you or your team used Opus.ai yet?
Yeah, Opus Clip. Yes, yes, we use Opus to create video clips.
Yep, that's great.
Yeah. When this podcast comes out, we'll use Opus and get some clips and start posting those.
Yeah, great. Can you tone down my grey hair at all with the AI?
Uh, I'll try.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll tell you what. We'll just focus all the video on me,
Yeah,
and then
fair
you
enough.
won't. There.
Now, you mentioned on funding the business, there was that part where you took some what we call the three Fs, as you probably are aware, friends, family, and fools, some money from the three Fs to help with. So it came from a family member to help with financing of that first charter. And what other
Mhm.
funding methods did you use over the time and over your businesses? Like, did you get investors in? Obviously, you would have leveraged some bank finance as well, particularly with the property. But did you have investors along the way or any other funding sources?
No, we didn't. We didn't need to, fortunately. We did get we had to have certain letters of credit because the vendors that we were working with wanted to have certain guarantees. So we would have to have letters of credit that were backed by deposits in a bank. And luckily, our cash flow was great enough so that we had the cash available to secure those letters of credit. Sometimes we'd use a line of credit, but we didn't really need it that much. We were able to fund our growth ourselves and out of the proceeds of the business. And we paid for that automation that was, well over six digits. That was a huge investment for us in uh, the late 1990s. That was a big number, 25 years ago. And we were able to pay for that out of pocket.
And this next question, I think it's probably more relevant to your current business, Ral West, Livin the Dream. But feel free to answer it to the other businesses. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Ral West, living the dream, yes, I didn't need a whole lot of funding. Well, let me put it this way. I had the funds
Hmm.
to be able to start up, and I've been fortunate that I've been able to pay people to help me along the way, to do what I'm doing without having the ability to hire the videographers and the other resources that help to advance you a little faster along the way. It would be tougher. It would just take longer and it would take more of your own time. So I've been lucky that I have the wherewithal to pay for my own startup right now. But yeah, it's a little different these days. There's many ways that you can start a business with nothing these days because of automation and AI and all that. There's a number of ways that you can grow a business organically. But if depending on what your goals are and what your product is, that determines how much money you're going to need, how much capital you'll need. But yeah, borrowing from family and friends, I don't really recommend it.
Nor
You
do
know,
I.
yeah.
And so, but what you're doing now sounds like you've got a real passion for giving back and helping others make the mistakes both you and I and many others have made. That's,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, it's something that I want to do. It's a passion for me. And as I've said, I don't need to work, but this is something I love doing. And people often say, well, if you could do anything you want, what would you do? And this is it. I get a kick out of it. It's fun. So that's why I'm doing it.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Well, it's stressful to have the learning curve. For me, particularly since this concept of a personal brand was brand new to me a couple of years ago, and putting myself out there, my face out there on these podcasts and so forth, that was a little hard for me. It caused me some stress and consternation. I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. I feel so exposed. So there's that. And just, learning the AI stuff and all of the different automations and all of the social media stuff. It's been a big learning curve. But for me, I'm a little weird, I guess, because I also like that kind of challenge. And I love digging into learning something new. But yes, it also causes some angst.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Of this business, the marketing
Hmm.
definitely is the hardest part. Coming up with the content is easy because it's all in my brain. So, I wrote my course myself and recorded it myself. And so that was, relatively easy. I mean, it was many long hours of work, but I did have the information at hand. But learning how to promote it and how to monetize it, that's been a challenge. Yeah.
Do you listen to any podcasts on how to market online courses?
Sure, I do. And I took a course I took Amy Porterfield's Digital Course Academy to learn how to create an online course and how to market it. And I'm still just this last weekend, I bought two more courses on, creating memberships and how to put on an event and, things like that. There's so much more out there. Now I'm looking at creating my own YouTube channel and, this and that. And it's like, oh, wow, there's so many possibilities. How do
Absolutely.
I, how do I get it all done?
Yeah. Have you listened to Jacques Hopkins' podcast, Online Course Guy?
No.
It's called the
Oh,
Online
maybe
Course
not
Show
fast.
now. Yeah. I'll send that through to you. It's a great weekly podcast, really humble, down to earth guy. So he had a online course he started 10 or 12 years ago teaching people how to learn piano in 21 days with a unique method. Like you don't need to read sheet music. I was forced to learn piano by my mother. I hated it. Can't coordinate my left and right hand, let alone the foot on the pedal. But as soon as I picked up a guitar, I could play by ear. It's very different. So, um, yeah, and he's done over $4 million US in that business. He's very open with his numbers, but also what marketing works and what doesn't. And he has guests on with other courses, that course businesses, and he's got obviously a side business that helps people with their course business. So I'll shoot that through to you.
Yes, that would be wonderful. And I think it's fascinating to me how many different topics online courses cover. I mean, it's just incredible. I was just listening to something about somebody who's, teaching parents how to deal with autistic children and how to teach them, or how to discipline your kids, or, gardening or baking or whatever, so many different things. I mean, it's unlimited what you can do. And yeah, the education is everywhere. We don't have to go to college anymore to learn everything.
That's right. I think, yeah, the online course show has been going for about 7 or 8 years. I've gone back through all of his weekly podcasts, and there are so many different niches in there. My favorite and the craziest one I heard is a lady in Singapore that has an online course and membership that teaches parents, Asian parents, not to hit their kids.
Well, I wonder if that was the one that I listened to about today, because it was something about disciplining
Yep.
Asian kids
Yeah.
and doing it in a different way.
Mm.
Yeah, interesting. And she's got quite a following.
Yes. Yeah. Doing about 200,000 US dollars a year from memory. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Oh, enjoy the least about managing fast growth. Well, just keeping up with it, the amount of work that it takes. And um, yeah, I think, learning to pace myself. Sometimes the growth will start dictating to me, and I'll feel like, oh, I have to run faster and faster in order to keep up. And sometimes you just have to say, now, wait a minute, I can be in control of this. I don't have to, be commanded by the business to run quite that fast if I don't want to. And, you can take a step back and take a breath.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
I love the creativity and the autonomy. And, if I succeed, it's all me. Of course, if I fail, that's all me too. But it's just a very exciting path to be on, and I love being able to serve people and change their lives. Hopefully, that's very exciting. If I can bring some information to people that can help them have a better life, that's incredibly rewarding.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Well, I think my mindset shift happened long, long before I started this small business. And I've been working on mindset for decades and studying with people. And it's a constant effort, of course, because sometimes we all get kind of bogged down with feeling discouraged or depressed or whatever. And then we have to pull ourselves up and say, no, 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 this is going to work out. And you have to have faith in yourself. And I don't think that an entrepreneur without a positive mindset can make it. Just bluntly, you have to have that faith in yourself and confidence, and you have to believe in what you're doing and just go for it, and be willing to take the risks, and not worry about making mistakes and failing, because you're going to, and you have to just keep pushing forward.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think being persistent about keeping track of all of the pieces working on your business. And, I use a number of productivity tools that help me keep all my little balls in the air and so that I don't let anything drop through the cracks. I think you need to pay attention to the details, and you don't want the details to drown you, so you need to stay on top of them. And that's something I do every day, all day. And I highly recommend it, and I'm an organizer and a planner, and that helps a lot.
Are you a small business owner who is ready to take your professional growth to the next level? Sign up to the Grow a Small Business Weekly newsletter. This is your go-to email every Friday and will take about 2 minutes to read. Join the Grow a Small Business community who, like you, are investing in their professional development. Each week, we curate valuable resources, whether it's expert advice, books, podcasts, industry insights, or actionable strategies. We've got you covered. Leave your email at growasmallbusiness.com/weekly. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah. So, we've had some incredible successes with our hiring. The COO and CFO that I mentioned were brilliant hires on our part, and they didn't know each other, and then they ended up being best friends, and they're still best friends, 17 years after the business sold. So that was a huge success. And then every once in a while, we would blow it. We would hire somebody and bring somebody on board that just didn't work out. And we would try and try and try to work with them. And then, then we'd have to sit back and go, okay, well, you can, take the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And we'd find that sometimes people would, what we would call deselect themselves. We would give them every opportunity, and then they just couldn't bring themselves to follow through. And so then they would opt out. Sometimes we'd have to help them opt out, but
Yeah.
so but we learned over the years that there were better ways of hiring, and we got better and better at it. We actually started giving little tests to people that we hired in our company, and we give them a short little exam to see, well, do they have any idea of geography? Do they know where Hawaii is? That kind of thing. And that helped us weed through. And then we would put the ones that we felt were high potential, we would put them in a class, and we would pay them to be in a class for 2 weeks with a cohort of other, onboarding team members. And we would teach them everything about the organization, starting with, the company culture and guiding principles and values and all of that. Plus, of course, just how to do their job. And we wouldn't turn them loose until they successfully got through that 2 weeks of training. And then we still gave them a mentor, somebody who they would work with and help them along the way. So I think those were some very successful strategies that we used, and I recommend that.
Yep. I do too.
You know,
Everything you said. Yep.
Yeah, and sometimes we would just tell people right up front. We kind of called it, firing them before you hire them, is that we'd let them know, these kinds of behaviors or performance will not cut it. This will get you out of this company by doing this, this, and this. So you just let them know up front, this is what the expectations are, and this will not fly, and you just lay it on the line.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Okay, that's a wonderful question. I think that you have to start with assessing your own principles and values. And I also recommend to people that they have in mind what their vision for their life is, where you want to be yourself 10, 20, 30 years down the road, and make sure that your business is going to be able to support that lifestyle. Because I personally believe that the business should support our lifestyle and not the other way around. And then make sure that your culture imbues all of your principles, your values. And we had some guiding principles that served us very well. One of them was something my husband came up with, an acronym that he called WERQ, the work ethic. And that W was win-win, the E stood for efficiency, the R was responsibility, and the Q was quality. And we used this in teaching our team, and we would use it to guide our team in making decisions. So we would give them the authority and we would empower them to make decisions as long as they followed these guiding principles. And I think that that went a long way towards making a very solid foundation for our culture. And the win-win was something that we really enjoyed because what that meant was if we win, everyone wins, and we're going to celebrate it. And we would celebrate big. And our team loved it. And, we sold Hawaii, and in the Hawaiian language, ohana is family. So
Yeah.
we had our ohana. Everybody was part of the ohana. They still call themselves ohana, even though we haven't worked together for, 15 years. And we would have some fantastic parties. We took the whole company to Las Vegas for the night for one of our bonus parties, or hired limousines and took them to, a five-star restaurant, and everybody got all dressed up. I mean, it was fun, and we enjoyed winning, and we enjoyed sharing the wins with our team, and they were totally on board with us. We had alignment, and that was great.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance. Sounds like it was a bit out of whack early on, but you've nailed it in the last few years.
Yes, very out of whack early years. And so achieving balance was a gradual process. And now I've got better balance than I've ever had because I do make time for, my exercising and eating right and getting sleep and having the vacation time and so forth, and having time for the family. And I think that you have to be really conscious about it, and you have to make it a priority because many, many years I would say, oh yeah, well, I'll exercise if I have time. And I never had the time, and I didn't make the time. I didn't make it a priority. And my body suffered from that. So you have to set a parameter for what you can do, and make it so that it's enjoyable for yourself. Don't say I'm going to go to the gym at 5 o'clock every morning and work out for an hour if you just you're not a morning person and you're just not going to do it. That's not, you're not going to win at that. So you want to try to make these things, give yourself some wins and say to yourself, I'm going to do something, every week I'm going to do something for myself that moves my body and makes myself a little healthier physically. And then give yourself permission to make that, whether it's walking, running, swimming, whatever you want to do, and do something that you enjoy.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself? Sounds like a lot.
Tons,
Mm.
tons. I don't know how to add it all up, but it's probably several $100,000, if not more. And, hours and days and weeks. I mean, just this last year, I've attended two Tony Robbins events in Florida where, it's many thousands of dollars for each one of those, plus, traveling across the country. And I'll be doing another one in July. And then another one in September. And, so that's just this year. But, throughout my life, I've spent a lot of money. In fact, my very first Robert Kiyosaki workshop, I could not afford that. It was 500 and something dollars for a weekend. I'm like, oh God, I don't have that. And I just put it on the credit card and just like, you know, but I went ahead and did it. And then I just kept going because I knew it was so valuable. You have to get that education. You have to keep learning and expanding your mind. And that's another way to keep your mindset positive too, is keep feeding it with other people's positive energy. We need that.
And you've mentioned you've had mentors or coaches along the way. Any advice for the audience on getting and leveraging mentors or coaches?
Well, absolutely, you must do it. And you'll have to decide who the best mentor is. But I mean, there are you can have a personal coach. You can have somebody that's close by that you meet with, one-on-one. You can get, coaches on Zoom. You can just read books and, listen to the podcast like you were talking about. Those can be mentors too. So you don't have to spend a ton of money. I mean, you could go on YouTube and search for all kinds of subject matter that will enlighten you and grow your mindset, and it doesn't cost anything except your time. So, there's many, many ways to go about getting a mentor, but I just recommend that you make sure that that's part of your life.
And you've also mentioned you had a board of advisors. I'm obviously a big advocate. I sit on now 6 boards. I chair most of them here in
Mm.
Australia. I love that role, the chair role particularly. Um, any any other tips or advice for the audience thinking of putting together a board of advisors or eventually a board of directors? A lot of people ask, what size should you put that board of advisors together? What size should the business be, for example?
Well, our business was not that big when we brought them on board. We didn't have a huge staff, but we wanted the company to grow, and we recognized that we didn't know everything. So we chose 3 people, and then it was the two of us. So it was a board of 5, and then we had our COO and CFO that also participated in the meetings. But my husband and I had the vote.
Hmm.
We didn't give the decision-making authority to anybody else because we owned 100% of the company. But you can ask people in your industry, in your community to help you out, and maybe you provide something and on a trade basis or something to compensate them for their time. But there's lots of expertise around you, and I think it's a very good idea to take advantage of it and get their advice.
Now, Raoul, you're one of the few we've had on that's exited not just one business, but several. Any other advice for the audience thinking about exiting one day?
Yes. And I think we've alluded to it already, and that is that if you are the operator of your business and you've got your hands in the day-to-day operation, you can't sell your business. It's not going to be worth much because the company will have to buy you as well. And I've talked to people who have sold their company who didn't extricate themselves from the day to day. And they had to sign like a 2-year contract. It was like servitude
Yep.
that they had to provide their services to get the new owners up and running. And you don't want that. So you absolutely have to duplicate yourself and create those systems and get yourself out of the day-to-day operation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also the multiple on EBITDA or operating profit, which is what most businesses, apart from SaaS businesses or recurring businesses, are on multiple of top line. Most traditional businesses are valued on the multiple of EBITDA. So the more you can prove that you choose to work in the business or on the business, but you don't have to, then that multiplier goes up, which just adds a lot more value on exit. And as you'll hear when you get into John Warrillow's weekly podcast, there's a lot of those stories where people weren't prepared. Some of them, not all of them, and they were not only stuck there for a year or two to have to work in the business, but part of their payout was an earnout, which most of them never hit because they quit before their 2 years was up. They couldn't handle it. So it's a big lesson. There's a great The first podcast I listened to on John's Built to Sell Radio was an Aussie. Moved to London in 2013, I think. Went on the UK Apprentice in 2014, won it. Lord Sugar invested £250,000, so 500,000 Australian dollars, in his crappy digital agency. Had about 5 cheap staff, and the plan was to grow up for 6 years, and then Mark, the founder, not work in the business for 2 years, and then sell the business. So they got to the 8 year mark, and they had about 130 team members in the UK there. Um, and Mark himself hadn't worked in the business for 2 years, as was the plan, and went to Lord Sugar, what multiple on EBITDA should we sell for? And he asked, well, what does a digital agency in the UK of our size get at the moment? And Mark said 3 to 4 times. So Lord Sugar, being Lord Sugar, said, right, I want 5 times. So off Mark went, had 48 lunch meetings, 47 no's, because he'd tell them that their terms before they ordered lunch. And if they didn't agree to the headline terms, he'd say, right, lunch is off, see you later. And they were all cash deal. He walks the next day and a multiple of 9.5 times EBITDA. It was lunch number 48, sold to a strategic. Obviously, they got that. All right, Brad, on to our final 5 questions. What do you think's the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Hardest thing in growing a small business is sticking with it, having the faith and having the stamina to persist and get through the discouraging times and have the faith and persistence. That's pretty much it.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
The E-Myth, we talked about that already.
Yep, totally agree. Mine too.
Hands down. Yeah.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I do. I use a lot of them. And of course, the thing that comes to my mind, top of mind, is the Tony Robbins Business Mastery that I attended last August and will be doing the Business Mastery 2 this coming September. That's, it's expensive and very, intense for many days, but boy, do you learn, it's like getting a master's degree in business. I mean, it's just incredible, the talent and the knowledge that's imparted.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
One tool to grow a small business. Well, I'd have a hard time narrowing it down to one, but I guess I would just summarize it as systems. You have to have systems. Absolutely. So there's many different types of systems, and I wouldn't be able to narrow it to just one piece of automation or an app, but just use them. Get efficiency.
Yep. Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 44 years ago back in 1981?
You never know where this path is going to lead you. You just have to start, and you have to be willing to go with the flow and pivot when you need to, learn what you can. Don't be afraid of failure. That's a huge one. Don't be stuck on perfection, and just go for it. Go for it and believe in yourself.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for your time today, Ral. I've really enjoyed our chat. I've been looking forward to this for a few weeks. Congratulations to you and your husband and the team on the growth of many businesses over the years. The main one, the charter business, flying 50,000 Alaskans to Hawaii each year, grew from yourself to 52 team members, downsized that a little bit, and then got into property and many other businesses. You probably had more businesses than me. So congratulations to you and your husband and everyone on the growth. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Troy.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.